Okay, hey folks, Mark Locklear here and screencast on. And this week, I think the title of the week I have is configure a web app for PHP and or I'm sorry, configure a web app for MySQL. We'll be using PHP to do it. What do I want to say here? A couple things. Number one, so the first part of the assignment, I'll share my screen. I'll just say a couple things. So the first part of the assignment, I'm asking you to choose an app from this list. Let's go with the new window. This is just sort of this is a website I found kind of rando, but all seems to be valid. Valid open source projects. And basically just find an app and load it on the server. This can be, you can make this as sophisticated as you like, or, as easy as you like. I mean, this CAN board, I found it looks pretty straightforward. Just about all of these. I mean, notice again, at this point in your journey at AB Tech, you really should be becoming somewhat self-sufficient. So I'm not giving you like as much detail here as I could. Want to leave it up to you to look at these apps, investigate them. Maybe it's one you're interested in. Maybe you just want to do the assignment, but either way, you need to look at things like, well, where's the source code? Where's the database configuration at? Those sorts of things. For instance, if I click on this download code on this one, you can see the code here. You're going to want to download that. I'm going to leave it up to you how you want to do that. GitHub has different ways of doing it. You can download a zip file and then unzip it and then copy those files over. SCP, Secure Copy Protocol, is a way of doing that. Um, and yeah, so I'm just going to leave it up to you how you want to move files around. If you have questions, ask me and I can let you know. And then just about all these have this, I think this config default.php is going to have, so notice here, this is going to have your database, username, database password, various things here. So you just sort of need to work through, I mean, PHP, and not even PHP, just generally apps that access MySQL in general sort of all have a similar convention. So I'm going to leave that up to you to choose an app, install it on your server, connect it with your local instance of MySQL, and then you're just going to share a link to the app with me and populate it with some data if you need to. I mean, generally, a lot of these apps won't even load if the database configuration is not there. Um, so yeah. So that's assignment one. The second one is we're going to install PHP MyAdmin. PHP MyAdmin is it's an open source project. It's been around forever. It's going to be similar to MySQL Workbench. It's a little different in that MySQL Workbench is an application, a local application you have to download on your computer. PHP MySQL lives on the server, so it's web accessible. It's a web application that actually lives on the server. I've used it a ton over the years, and honestly, it's the easiest way. I mean, I honestly use it more than I do my Workbench. Must know that I'm talking about it. It's bouncing. Let me stop that. I typically that's what I use for sort of data or yeah, MySQL administration, like general, even like browsing databases and looking at data, things like that. It's super easy to install. And if you want to give other people access to the database to see things, you can create like a view only user. I've seen it used as maybe you give limited access to certain users. So if they need to actually go in and touch data on the back end, super convenient way to do that. Obviously, it lives on the web. It's web accessible. So you just need to be aware of any security concerns that might be there, just with regard to making sure you have a secure username and password and things like that. So I think what I'm going to do is walk you through setting up PHP MyAdmin on your server. Hopefully this doesn't blow up. It may because I actually already went through the install just to make sure there wasn't any issues, and then I uninstalled it. So sometimes you can run into issues there, but we'll see. I've generally got the directions for you here. First thing you're going to do is sudo apt install phpMyAdmin. So there's a phpMyAdmin package out there in the repository in the I guess you'd say in the Ubuntu or the trusty repositories, and that's where that's coming from. So I'm going to hit app install there. You're going to get something like this, and this is going to look a little different. Notice it says reinstall database for phpMyAdmin. Since I think it knows that I previously installed it. That's why it's saying that. So I'm going to say yes. Provide a password. So you can provide a secure password here. And then it's going to ask you to confirm it. Okay, it's going to go through some gyrations. After this is done, we're going to go into Apache. There's some Apache configuration settings that we need to do. So let me pause here. All righty, so we're going to modify Apache Conf. So I'm just going to copy this chunk. And in fact, this may already be there because, as I mentioned, I had this earlier. So I'm going to do vim sudo vim etc Apache 2, and then here's our Apache 2.conf. Yep, it's already there. So go down, just so you can know a quick way to do this. I'm holding it if you're this, I guess if you're a Vim user, I'm holding the shift button on my keyboard, then arrowing up and down, and you can go a page at a time. So it's a quick way rather than just sort of having to go line by line. Anyway, you're going to paste that in. Just paste it in under the last directory statement that's there. And essentially all this is doing is when we're done and this is configured in our web browser, we're going to put /phpMyAdmin. This tells Apache that, okay, yep, I want you to go into the DBA210 folder and look for phpMyAdmin. Look for phpMyAdmin folder there. So you can sort of think of it as from a routing standpoint. Anytime the domain name, in our case, it's going to be the IP address, and then for instance, let me pull this down. So for instance, when I enter this to-do underscore list, if you recall, var www. You remember we created this DBA210 folder, and then of course inside that we have this to-do list.php. So that's sort of what the routing does. When you go to do list, it's going to automatically look inside this var www here, right? And same thing when we go to phpMyAdmin, and it shouldn't work now. MyAdmin. Well, it actually does. We've got to create we've got a symlink that's actually the issue here. So let me go back to our instructions just so we can stay on task. So you're going to paste that inside Apache, and then the last thing you're going to do is paste this code into your terminal window. Paste that in and hit return. This is called a symlink or a symbolic link. And basically what this says is because when we installed Apache, when we installed phpMyAdmin, the files actually live inside this user share phpMyAdmin folder, right? If I go ls user share phpMyAdmin, see, here are all our files. But if you remember, in our web browser, when we go to the IP address of our server, it's going to be looking in the DBA210 folder. So what we need to do is when we go to localhost phpMyAdmin. So let's sort of walk through that. When we enter our IP address phpMyAdmin in our web browser and hit return, this automatically goes to var www DBA2. It automatically goes to the DBA210 folder and looks for, in this case, PHP my admin. So this alias, or I'm sorry, this symbolic link, you can think of it as, and that's just what it is, a link. It's basically an alias, could be another term you could use, but essentially this points and says, hey, if any web request comes to this DBA210 folder and looks for PHP my admin, forward them over to user share PHP my admin, and then that's where the application actually loads that. Okay, once you've done all that, go ahead and restart your Apache server. And then at that point, when you go to the IP address slash PHP my admin, you're going to get a login screen there. Let me log out. Yeah, so you'll get something like this. You can use your workbench your workbench admin user here. That should be an appropriate one. 210. Root probably won't work here. If when we set up MySQL, if you recall, there was, I think, one of the questions that asked is allow remote root login, and I think we said no there. So you're actually on a remote server here. The root login is just if you're local on the console. So because we said no to root allowing, and that's just a security feature, right? You wouldn't want somebody logging in remotely with the root account. That's why that won't work there. However, here we can do no. There we go. All right. So you can log in with any user you like there, and make any changes you like. And you can experiment with some of the other users you've created in previous weeks as far as the exercise goes. Layout's pretty straightforward here. Again, I really like PHP my admin. It's my sort of go-to tool of choice for, if I'm looking for a GUI administration. And again, the nice thing is it's web-based. So again, unlike with MySQL Workbench, you have to have that installed app. You can sort of get to it from it. You can get to it from anywhere. Again, another advantage is, okay, I can create a user if I know Jeff at church needs to log in and view, the website database, or maybe pull some data or view some data from there. I could create a read-only user for him, give him the web address, share the username and password with him, and let him have at it. So it's really convenient from that standpoint. Notice all your databases are going to show up on the side over here. This is our to-do. This is the initial to-do database that I created on my server. Here's our items here. This little pencil gives you the edit button. In fact, yeah, that might be fun. Let's open another tab here, and let's do our to-do. Paste that in, and let me go here. So here's my to-do list. I'm going to edit. Notice this says my fourth important item. So I'm going to add very here, very important item. And if I say go, notice that says it's saved and updated. Now, if I update here, notice it shows up here on the website. So again, you can see we're actually touching the data on the back end. You can look at the structure of the data. You can run SQL queries inside this SQL tab. You can export data, export and import. Again, I've done some pretty sophisticated work on some fairly large databases using MySQL or PHP my admin to manage and do things inside MySQL. So yeah, I think I'm going to stop there. That's all I have for now. So those are your two assignments for the week. Again, I would encourage you to experiment with the first part of the assignment, uploading a PHP app. Again, A lot of flexibility there. Once you really understand the structure of Apache, where it's serving up files from, folders and things like that, it really, I know when I first learned that, it was sort of the clouds party for me, and it really made a whole lot of sense. And I mean, the other advantage to it is over up to this point, you may have used something like cPanel or some of these other administrative tools that number one, they're way more expensive. And I mean, they take some of the pain out of it, but you've got this whole layer of sort of GUI administration in front of you. Whereas when you've got an Ubuntu server, when you've got your own Linux server, you're managing it and sort of doing everything there. It really feels a lot more streamlined, and just from an empowerment standpoint, you feel a lot more empowered being able to run and load apps that way. All right, that's all I've got for now. Everybody have a great week, and always let me know if you have questions.